Down to 3.
All right.
Oh, that's so sad.
I'm just quickly clearing out my tabs to
Very
make
important.
my screen share slightly less hectic. Okay.
Very important. You want to make sure you have a shareable desktop.
I used to go to Stop and Shop.
Oh, do you want any more
Okay.
refs?
See if I can share my
There
screen.
are 2 left. Are you counting them?
So what I'm sharing right now is the form, the thing that I have been bonding with for a good month now, staring at it, getting to know it. It does not look particularly complicated. I will say that when I joined the assembly line project, I thought that it was just best practice to choose the next form in line. So we had a bunch of great presentations this week in the Lawyering in the Age of Smart Machines class, and people had like very emotional reasons for picking their form. I have grown emotionally attached to this form, but I truly just picked the next one in line. But kind of, I work for the city of Boston. So for some background, I do take a lot of pride in providing good city services. So I feel like kind of facilitating the public benefits process was very meaningful to me. So I did grow very attached to my firm. But here it is. And here I'm going to go ahead and kind of run through the form process as it is right now. Go ahead and accept. This is the kind of information from the top of the form. It asks for a name. It asks for a street address. It asks for some contact information. For a social security number or agency ID. And then it kind of gets into the question of.
Sarah, when it says it's asked for a social security number or agency ID, what does that mean? If I were filling this out, how would I know what the agency ID? I mean, I might look at it and say, what's an agency ID? Do I need an agency?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wasn't sure. So I definitely have, I think, questions around the overall process. I'll also kind of get, there's like a field that's a little ambiguous. Is an agency ID, so I guess to your point, in my mind, I was like, maybe an agency ID is something that someone, knows if they're going through this process, like a SNAP benefits agency ID, but great point. I think I can add kind of a sub question around what that is.
Well, why don't we back it up a little? So the framing of the use of this form, having someone be your representative, what is the use case that you expect for someone using this form?
So there are 4, I guess it's a great question. And there's kind of 4 different reasons you would ask somebody to be a representative. So I probably, which I get to later in the form, but I think probably up front. But do you think that this is like the screen that explains things? Do we think that it's do we think people typically read this screen? I guess is my question. Like, should I kind of format things so that I'm laying out what they're going to expect on this screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Are we doing a language review? Is this a language review as well as just a technical review?
I think given the size of the form, I think it could be worthwhile to do a light language review.
Yeah. I'm open. I am open.
We usually
to
restrict ourselves to not doing that because otherwise then we sit in committee and talk about language on one page for like an hour. So I think if we can just like flag issues of like, that's a little cumbersome, we won't try to figure out what the answer is. But if Caroline wants to say no passive voice, that's fine.
So I think the other thing is, Sarah, have you gone through the plain language?
I would say that too, I'm sorry.
So I think maybe for this one, it'll be focused on technical with language flags. And then next week for Teaching Tuesday, I can come back because I haven't totally, I feel like right now I'm still just trying to get
that's
the flow right.
I think maybe,
That's
so
fair.
I think it maybe not say anything about language unless it's like that agency ID, because that's more than language.
Yeah. No,
Did I hear Lisa say something? Were you going to
Lisa
say
was
something, Lisa?
gonna share something.
What I was going to say is I think it's useful from the very get-go, from your very intro page.
Mhm.
If there are 4 purposes the form can serve, even if they're just bullet points,
Yeah.
say this is a form where you can do 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if you use, I don't know, branching logic or something, you can worry about that down the line. But right now, this is only one of the 4 things that I saw in your paper form. And so unless you want to have 4 different places where this lives and each one channels somebody to a different use, you'll have to decide whether you want one interview to cover all 4 situations or however many you have, or 4 different things where people are channeled into one of the 4 situations. You know, like use this form to choose somebody to do your SNAP, use this form to be able to get money out of your cash account. You know, you have to just
Mhm.
think people can digest. But if you are going to plan at the end to tell people that you can do all these other things with the form, just from my experience, I think that's going to confuse people.
Mhm. Yeah, no, totally
Or
fair.
because if you can have one form do all these things, then it's the same info. So it's just how much you think people can handle at the get-go.
I'm gonna jump ahead just so that I can kind of show. It might be helpful to see the options. So definitely the screen. I need to flesh out what an agency ID is, and I can put that on
One
the
thing
first.
just to flag on the social agency ID thing.
Mhm.
So I don't know where this is, and I assume you're doing this as a project for Quentin's class, so he can
Mhm,
talk to you more about what the expectations are for this afterwards.
Mhm.
We would, as part of the document assembly line, never collect social security number as something in one of our forms because of the way we handle that information. So we occasionally will ask for last 4,
Mhm.
but that's just something to think about.
So I guess in practice, would it be more so like we don't collect it and we just leave that field blank and we say like, if you do have, like, if you would like to go with the last digits of your social security number, like
So it
fill
depends
that
on
out.
what the workflow is for the form. So we often have forms that we're taking, we're transmitting electronically to someone. So all the information that needs to be on the form would have to be on the form. So the question really would be would the agency take it without the social? But if you're having this as something where someone prints something, then it might be the type of thing where you need to then add this after it prints. But I think Quinn's going to have a much better, because he's unmuted.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm suspecting you probably only need the last 4 of the social security number, but we
Yes,
should check
yes.
with somebody who does food stamp advocacy.
SME, yeah.
Gotcha.
And
I think it is last 4.
that
I'm
would be
pretty
fine
sure.
to
I'm
get.
pretty sure it's last 4. It's not. I don't know why I did not include that. It is definitely last 4. I feel like I've been.
At
Oh,
least-
okay.
I've been
Okay.
staring. Yeah, it is.
And-
I'm sorry. I've been
Okay,
staring at this
very
form
good.
forever, and I forget that the form and I are not one. But
Then
yeah, it's last 4.
the thing you want to think about then. So normally when we have last 4 of social, we restrict the number of digits you can input so that there's no way someone accidentally puts their whole social security number. You have the added complexity of that you have an agency ID as an option on that same line that I suspect could be more than 4 digits long.
Mhm.
So you might want to bifurcate, might want to split that question into, do you want to use your agency ID or the last 4 of your social? If someone says the last 4 of their social, then you could present a question, limit it to the last 4 so that someone does not accidentally put their social in. If they say they're going to use their agency ID, they have a more free-form space that someone could write anything into. But we want to do everything we can to prevent someone from putting a social into something that then gets transmitted and stored.
Mhm. Yes.
And
that makes
then-
I just had a brief,
My guess is the agency ID is for people who don't have a social security number, or people who don't want to release it to DTA. One of the two. So that's just a guess. Sorry. I think Lisa's going to say something on item 10.
you had a really important sentence where you said you can only pick one person as a representative on this form, but the person could have multiple roles. I think that's a great thing to say. And my only suggestion would be, like I said before, at the get-go, to tell people, like, if you want different people to be able to do different things, you have to do more than one of these. So if you say that at the start, people won't inadvertently give one person too many roles, say, like, these are the things you can do with this form. different people can do these different things, but you can only have one person per form you appoint as the person who can do stuff for you. And I just don't know what DTA is, but everybody else probably does.
An issue for post MVP might be to generate multiple forms for this user. So if you want to write down a post MVP.
And Michelle, in making that suggestion, has pointed out something really important that we didn't give you as a framing in the beginning, which you should have to think about. So we're going to give you a lot of suggestions. We're going to tell you a lot of things will be improvements. Not all of those need to be in your MVP. So the job is to just capture them so that you can put them as issues so that someone else in the future could come by and pick them up.
What does MVP stand for?
Well,
Question.
that's our minimum viable product, right? So
Gotcha.
that's the goal you're shooting for to get out of first release. Okay. And so the idea is just enough features that it's useful for someone and not harmful in any way. And that'll vary based upon the form, right? So some forms, you can just take it and turn it basically into fill out the blanks and it's good. Some forms, if you did that, that would be dangerous because they need more, you need more guidance for the user so that they don't fill out things improperly. But so that's sort of a balancing act. And I'll let Quentin speak more to that if he wants to.
The only other thing I would add is, I don't know if you recall, Sarah, the maturity model that we talked about a little bit in class 2. So that you could think of the further you get up the maturity model, the further past minimum viable product you usually are. And we're expecting you to reach like a level 2 on that model, which is relatively basic.
Gotcha. Cool. Let's see if I can. Okay, so we got notes on this page. So this is where, and I think like I think that the instructions I put at the beginning, I can weave through a lot of these pages to remind people. So I'm just gonna put my sister in there. So there were a few iterations of this. Originally, I kind of had each thing that could be done and then asked them to put in the name. And then when I realized only one person could be on this form and that would allow multiple people on the form, I kind of went with this model. So I have, so maybe up here is another place where I could like kind of lay this out. I tried to kind of proactively lay it out with these questions, with these like help feature, but essentially like the call here is that you could check you can check 4 boxes, but you don't have to check 4 boxes. But if you kind of want to name another person for another thing, you would have to fill out another form. So I definitely can lay that out, but let's for now just use like these 2. These fields, and this was part, I think a lot of these are just like text fields. So like this could be a date field that I'll probably try to work in. This could be kind of an address, a phone number. So these are very much
MVP. See,
Yeah.
that's where you can do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I definitely think that a different version of this a more advanced version would have some more fields. But this is what it looks like prior to signing. I have to figure out. Another thing is I tried so hard to like put these, get these boxes right, but I feel like I got it closer at the bottom. So I'll probably try to redo those, but it kind of worked. Like the ones you put down, it'll put the name. One question, and maybe I feel like this group has worked with a lot of forms, so you might know this date of birth. Is this the date of birth for the signature of the person that you choose because it's on this line, or is it for the applicant? And I will find a subject matter expert to ask because I had a really hard time understanding whose date of birth this should be. And
That's a great, that's your SME, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
As I was like looking at it, I was like, I just can't tell because it's on the same line as this, but it doesn't.
Why would you need
The
that?
The only
Yeah.
thing I could think of is making sure the person you choose has legal capacity in terms of aid, but it's unclear. You know, you want to make sure the person also giving the authority is sufficient aid.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely and like telephone, I'm assuming it's like I was going by like Lion logic, but I don't know if that is the correct logic. And then a final kind of piece that I was thinking through is this form requires 2 signatures. So like, let's say I have a signature. This form would essentially, like, you need a second signature for it to be complete. And it's kind of nice that you have this email. Like, I don't know if this page can be edited, but like, I think this would be the page where it's like, okay, you need the second signature, email it to the person or print it. But maybe this page cannot be edited. Or I take that back because this language is here.
We have a the basic signature flow, which one of us can take you through implementing. I mean, we're working on a multi-signature flow as well, but there's another signature flow. Is that in the assembly line or was that only on MAVC? Quentin? There was previously a multi-signature flow that was a very kind of local thing that wasn't the fancy one. I don't know if Quentin can hear us. We can't hear you, Quentin. Maybe we'll find out later.
It looked like Quentin was trying to unmute to say something, but now he seems to have frozen.
Okay.
I don't think it's me because other people are still moving. That's what happened to me earlier. I'm like, you're frozen. And then I'm like, oh wait, everyone's frozen. That means I'm frozen.
But this text, and I mean, the answer can also be to have me just look through the code to figure it out. But this text, is this pulling from the first page or can I?
Not the first page. I think it's in the definition, but yeah.
But if I change this, is this the only place this goes or would it be reflected in another place? Like, I'm wondering if I should just make a custom message for the end of the form saying that you can email this to yourself or to the second person.
Well, you can put that in the sub question above, right?
So, but we have a whole, I mean, this is okay to debate.
Yeah, multiple
we have
things.
a way of doing this. So
Oh, I
like,
gotcha. You have to do the second signature. I'm just wondering, like, if somebody isn't, especially in today's age, like if somebody isn't with the second
yes.
signer.
So we have a flow that
Got it.
that will provide for that. That you will be able to email. This will just be something we will probably need to clarify and work on together.
Gotcha. Cool.
Also, there was no make changes button I could see on the preview page.
Let's see.
Oh, there's a make changes button. It just was probably under the fold when I looked at it. Perfect.
I was recklessly clicking through.
Recklessly.
This is all great feedback. So I already have a lot to incorporate, but anything else and I'll go back to the forum if.
Yeah, I mean, it's looking, I mean, the main bar I always like, do you put in input? Does the output come out as you expected? And so that bar seems to be there. I think it's clear you want to clean up some of the signature flow. You want to worry about the social because of the security implications. There are some issues around, Quinn is asking if his phone got muted, and the answer is yes. And let's see, maybe Quentin can unmute and add his. And then the other thing is just the all the the ideas about putting some roadmap at the beginning, saying this form does X, Y, and Z, so people know they're in the right spot.
And I will go through the plain language guide before Tuesday.
I think there's some language stuff to do, but technically most of this looks very.
And I think, Sarah, you had expressed that you would like to come back maybe next week and get some more input on language, right?
Yes, I will finesse the language and make a clear roadmap. I think that's very important. And on Tuesday, we can do a closer language review, which I think would be helpful. But I'll kind of try to iron out some of these technical suggestions prior to that.
All right. Well, cool. I think since we're so close to the 1 o'clock mark, maybe what we'll do is we'll stop this recording and then we'll do a separate Teaching Tuesday recording. And then Sarah, you'll very easily be able to find this. I'll share the link in the assembly line channel as well.
Thank you. So I can go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you so much. This was very, very helpful feedback. That was a productive and insightful 20 minutes. Thank you.
That was one of the shortest
Yes.
like
That was
reviews
efficient.
that I
That was
have
efficient.
ever seen.
Well, it'll go until next week. So it's
There
not, it's
you
not over
go.
yet, but
It's
I'll have some
extended.
language, some great language for next week that we can review.
Other thoughts or comments anyone wants to share before I stop the recording for this bit? And I know Quentin was trying to, but I don't know there seems to be some.
I don't know. Can you hear me now?
We
Yep.
can
Yes.
hear you now.
Yes, looks like you can. Okay. Nope, nothing else to add, but it looks great. I had a chance to see it last week, so.
Yeah.
I had really great captures of like all the iterations and my past failures that I had to fix. So
There were some questions for us about like where we are with like using the like simpler multi-signature flow. And I think that was the only question that we hadn't resolved. That was the one we were trying to ask you. But that also can be asked offline.
Great.
So
Yeah, there was nothing on the assembly line repo that used that, so I think we'll be like kind of looking at that all from scratch. It's definitely like not starting over with it, but it'll be a relatively large integration project, which we could prioritize to get done this summer. One other idea, though, is you're kind of thinking like there's one person who's going to sign in person and one person who will sign remotely. If you just ask for the signature that is the in-person one that you think is more likely up front, and then you could use the text at least to text the signature to the second person you want to have to sign now.
Mhm.
That's one possible workaround.
right. But
And I'm thinking there, like the most likely one would be like an advocate might want to send it to their client. So the representative is more likely to sign before sending it to the person who receives the benefits. It's just an idea.
gotcha. I gotcha.
the whole interview is directed at the person getting the representative, though it's not directed at the representative. So is that an issue to
I don't think
resolve?
so. I think the reality is that the person who's most likely to find it and use it repeatedly is going to be an advocate. But I could be wrong about advocates using this form. They might have a different form when you have an attorney or other representative. But I think they're food stamp advocates who aren't attorneys, who are social workers who might use a form like this pretty regularly.
What I'm trying to say is, should the form be directed at the advocate
No,
instead?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't really
Okay.
think so. Just because, again, an advocate is a repeat user and they'll be able to understand when it says you, it means the person who gets the benefits. And
Okay.
they're just pre-filling it for that person's benefit. That's not too hard for someone to understand.
Sure.
Yeah, so I don't think that would be something we would need to retarget.
Great.
All right.
And I'm just guessing also, I haven't done food stamps advocacy, so I could be wrong.
Well, Sarah does
But
have some questions.
if you're
for
looking
us
for
next.
someone, we could probably line up somebody in our welfare unit at GBLS.
And yeah, I can add this question in my line of questions for the subject matter expert as well.
All right. Great.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. I'll stop